Is he really taking up a whole row? Relax, the kid won't even know. He's out cold. The words cut through the dry, recycled air of Gate C-17 like a blade. A soft beeping, steady, insistent, came from the portable life support stretcher beside row 12A. Beneath the straps lay a thin 13-year-old boy, skin pale, eyelids still. Marcus Reed. He wore a hospital gown under a blanket, his fingers curled around nothing. A breathing tube hissed quietly. To his left sat his mother, Evelyn Reed, hands trembling, lips pressed white. A flight attendant in pressed Navy uniform tried to hide her smirk. Boarding starts soon, ma'am. We might need to rearrange for comfort. Evelyn looked up, voice small but steady. My son cannot be moved again. The doctors approved this transport. We're on our way to a specialist in Seattle. Please, he's fighting. Two crew members exchange a laugh, quick, careless, loud enough to hear. A passenger with headphones looked away. Another texted. The world kept moving while one mother held her breath. A man with a faded army jacket stepped forward. Show some respect. He's a child. His words hung in the air, unanswered. The overhead lights flickered as boarding was called. Wheelchair first. Medical transport next. People stared, some with pity, others with impatience. Evelyn placed her palm on Marcus's cheek, cool damp. You hold on, baby. Just a few more hours. Another attendant whispered to a coworker. They really think they can fly with that setup? It's a commercial plane, not a charity. A ripple of uncomfortable chuckles. Evelyn closed her eyes, humiliation burning behind them, but beneath it pure steel resolve. She pulled from her purse a folder, edges worn from nights without sleep. Doctor letters, approvals, emergency waivers. Proof. Every page fought for. Yet as she raised it, a supervisor approached, brows tight. Ma'am, we may need to reevaluate your boarding status. Evelyn's throat tightened. Marcus's monitor beeped, once sharply like a warning. A hush fell, and then footsteps. Hard, confident. A private security detail moved through the terminal. Behind them, an older man in a gray travel coat, silver hair, eyes sharp as winter. Passengers straightened. Crew members blinked. Whispers spread like wildfire. The hospital's billionaire owner had just entered the gate. Enjoying this? Tap subscribe for tomorrow's story. The man in the gray travel coat slowed as he reached Gate C-17. He took in the scene in one sweep. The stretcher, the pale boy, the beeping monitor, the rigid mother clutching a folder. The crew in Navy uniforms clustered too close, voices too light for a place this quiet. He didn't speak. Not yet. His name was Charles Bennett, and most of the people at C-17 only recognized him as another older traveler with tired eyes and a carry-on. They didn't know he was worth billions. They didn't know his name was on the paperwork inside Evelyn Reed's folder. 6 hours earlier, in a glass-walled office at Westlake Children's Hospital in Dallas, that folder had been opened between two trembling hands. Evelyn's. Mrs. Reed, said Dr. Lauren Hill, her voice gentle but direct, the specialist in Seattle, this is the best option. Maybe the only one. Morning light had filtered through the blinds, striping Marcus's hospital bed in pale gold. Machines hummed. His chest rose and fell under the blanket. Too slow, too fragile. A frame drawing he had made before he got sick. A basketball hoop and a crooked sun leaned on the windowsill. He's only 13, Evelyn whispered. He hasn't even had his first year of high school. Can't we do the surgery here? Dr. Hill folded her hands. The cardiac team in Seattle has done this procedure many times with kids like Marcus. They have equipment we don't. The key is getting him there safely. A transport coordinator had clicked her pin, eyes on a checklist. Ground ambulance would take too long. He's stable enough for air transport, but the medical jet is booked. We can apply for an emergency override. Evelyn swallowed. We don't have that kind of money. We're not talking about money, Dr. Hill said firmly. We're talking about time. The coordinator hesitated. There is one way. A commercial flight, with a portable life support unit and a cleared aisle seat. It's not standard, but under federal guidelines with written approval. Her words had faded into a blur. All Evelyn could see was Marcus's face, soft and slack, his eyelashes resting on his cheeks. She brushed a curl from his forehead. Would he be safe? Tell me the truth. If we do nothing, Dr. Hill answered, we know what happens. If we get him to Seattle, I can look you in the eye and say we tried everything. The door had opened then, quiet but sure. Charles Bennett stepped in, no white coat, no tie, just a neatly pressed shirt and a visitor badge clipped to his breast pocket. Evelyn had seen his face before, blown up in framed photos on the hospital's philanthropy wall downstairs. He offered his hand. Mrs. Reed, I'm Charles. I help oversee the foundation that supports this hospital. Dr. Hill asked me to join for a moment. Evelyn stood uncertain. Are you with Billy? A faint, sad smile. No, ma'am. I'm with Hope. He'd listened as the options were laid out again. The cost, the risk, the flight. Is it even allowed? Evelyn asked. Him on a regular plane like that? With proper clearance, yes, the coordinator said. We'd need the airline to agree. It can be complicated. Charles had looked from the folder to Marcus, back to Evelyn. I can't promise what an airline will do, he said slowly, but I can underwrite the medical transport, and I can ask my team to push the paperwork through today. You won't see a bill for the special equipment. Not from us. Tears had slipped down Evelyn's face, one by one. Why? You don't even know us. Charles clasped his hands behind his back, eyes lingering on the boy. Because a child's life isn't a line item. And because when my father was here, nobody could help. A long pause. The monitor had beeped, steady and indifferent. Finally, Evelyn nodded. Then we'll go to Seattle. Now, back at Gate C-17, that decision was colliding with cold stares and careless laughter. Charles watched as the supervisor in a crisp blazer gestured toward the stretcher. Ma'am, this is causing discomfort for some of our passengers. We're reviewing if this setup meets safety standards. Evelyn clutched the folder to her chest like a shield. All the approvals are here. From the hospital, from your airline, from the FAA. Please. My son doesn't have time. The beeping monitor ticked on, each sound a reminder that every second mattered. Charles's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, still unseen for who he really was, as the supervisor reached for the folder, and as one of the attendants rolled her eyes. Here we go again, the attendant muttered. Some people always need special treatment. Charles heard every word. And in that instant, he decided exactly how far he was willing to go. Charles Bennett moved to Evelyn's side, quiet but firm in presence. He did not announce himself. He simply watched and waited. The gate supervisor, a man in his 40s with polished shoes and a badge that read Mr. Walton, skimmed the paperwork with practiced disinterest. Some forms are incomplete. Your son's equipment blocks emergency egress. If we board you like this, we violate policy. We may need to reschedule. Evelyn's breathing shook. Reschedule? We can't. He needs to be in Seattle by tonight. His surgeon, her voice cracked. She said tomorrow morning is critical. Walton offered a sympathetic tilt of the head that didn't reach his eyes. I understand, but other passengers have rights too. A murmur spread among the waiting crowd. Some faces softened. Others hardened. Every second was a coin dropping, one by one, into a shrinking well of time. Charles lifted the corner of the folder, reading upside down. He recognized the hospital seal, and his own foundation signature beneath it. He inhaled slowly, not yet. Another attendant, Dana, leaned close to Walton. We're 42 minutes behind schedule. If we let this stick, boarding will be chaos. People are already complaining. Walton nodded. I'm leaning toward denial. We'll offer vouchers. Maybe medical standby tonight or tomorrow. Evelyn froze. Tomorrow might never come. The monitor, beep, beep, too slow, too thin. She tried again, voice raw. Marcus has been stable for 3 hours. We followed every instruction. Please look again. Dana exhaled hard through her nose. Ma'am, I know this is hard, but children get sick all the time. Not everyone can expect first-class treatment. Something in Charles snapped like a bone underweight. He stepped forward at last, voice level. May I ask a question? Walton looked him up and down. Just an older traveler in a coat. Sir, we're handling this. Charles didn't move. Are you? Walton blinked. Do you have a concern? One, Charles said. Your airline approved this medical boarding. That document you're holding bears my foundation's authorization. My signature. Charles Bennett. And you're about to revoke it because someone laughed. It was as if oxygen vanished. Dana's face blanched. Walton's grip on the folder tightened. Conversations around them stilled like snow falling in a chapel. A woman nearby whispered, "That's the Bennett? The Westlake Hospital guy." Charles nodded once. "We funded the equipment keeping Marcus alive long enough to be here. We pushed clearance in 3 agencies today. All we need is for you to honor your own approval." Walton cleared his throat. "I was unaware of your involvement on this level, Mr. Bennett." "But protocol." "Protocol?" Charles lifted his chin. "Protocol is to ensure safe passage, not to belittle families in crisis." He spoke calmly, but steel threaded through each word. "Recheck those forms." "Oh, wait." Walton opened the folder again, slower this time. Every line, every initial, every stamped approval. Charles watched his eyes change as the truth settled like weight. Passengers leaned in. Some recorded discreetly. A moment of public accountability rippled across the gate. Walton swallowed. We can proceed, pending one final safety confirmation from our captain." Dana looked between them, panic flickering at the edges of her composure. The authority she had hidden behind was slipping. Evelyn clutched Marcus's hand, relief trembling through her like wind through brittle reeds. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett." He shook his head gently. "Don't thank me yet. They still have one more decision to make." And then footsteps again. Harder this time. A pilot in full uniform approached, expression unreadable. He would decide whether Marcus flew or didn't. Captain Rick Holbrook stopped beside the stretcher, hat tucked under one arm, eyes steady as storm glass. He was tall, graying, the kind of man who had seen enough mid-air emergencies to measure risk in heartbeats. He studied the life support unit, the monitor, the oxygen cylinder. Then he looked at Marcus, a boy who should have been worrying about homework, not pulse rates. Walton straightened. "Captain Holbrook, this is the medical transport case we discussed. We're determining if it's safe to board." The captain nodded, but didn't look away from Marcus. "What's the current oxygen flow?" he asked gently. Evelyn spoke at once. 2 liters per minute, continuous. Stable since 6:40 a.m. His cardiologist signed these. She offered the folder with shaking hands. Holbrook read, slow and careful, a man who didn't guess when a life hung in the balance. The crowd held its breath with him. Finally, he turned to Charles. "You're Bennett, the hospital donor." "Yes," Charles answered. Holbrook's jaw flexed. "I've read about your foundation. You get kids where others can't." Charles dipped his head. "We're trying." Holbrook took one long breath. "Our aircraft's medical bay is limited. Turbulence could compromise the ventilator. If we hit pressurization issues." Evelyn stepped forward. "Please, Captain. Marcus doesn't have many hours left. The Seattle surgeon believes he does, if we get him there today. I can lose sleep. I can lose money. I cannot lose my son on a technicality." The captain's eyes softened, not pity, but human recognition. Still, he had a duty. "If I approve this, the unit must stay secured. The aisle must remain open for evacuation. 1 row blocked at most. And you, Mrs. Reed, must be able to respond if he changes condition." "I won't look away from him," she whispered. Holbrook closed the folder. Then he made the call. "We board them." Gasps scattered like dropped marbles. Relief washed over Evelyn's face, so fast it looked like she might collapse. Charles caught her elbow to steady her. Walton cleared his throat stiff. "Captain, there are passenger complaints. We have no open first-class row for stretcher accommodation. Economy is full. If we remove seats..." The captain lifted a hand. One gesture. Silence. "I've flown 32 years without losing a patient under my watch," Holbrook said. "Remove row 1C. Reassign 2 passengers to later flights with compensation. Open the space. Secure the stretcher. And I'll brief my crew personally." Walton opened his mouth, but the words died. He looked to Dana, both cornered by the captain's authority. Dana forced a tight smile. "Of course, Captain. Whatever you require." Holbrook turned to Evelyn. "Ma'am, I'll need you seated beside him during takeoff and landing. We'll monitor oxygen every 15 minutes. If his vitals dip, we divert." "Understood." "Yes," she breathed. Thank you. But Charles saw it, the crew's unease, the tension under the surface. Compliance was only skin deep. Respect had not yet taken root. And as the flight boarded, one uneasy detail emerged. 2 seats were removed. Space cleared. But not all crew shared the captain's decision. Dana whispered to another attendant as she secured the straps. Bennett or not, this is trouble waiting to happen. Soft words. Not soft enough. Charles heard. Evelyn heard. Marcus's monitor tapped out its fragile rhythm as if counting down to something unseen. And no one yet knew that when the plane hit cruising altitude, everything would shift, and the truth of power and empathy would be tested at 30,000 feet. 10 minutes after takeoff, Flight 278 leveled into cold, quiet air. Engines hummed like a distant storm behind steel. Lights dimmed to a soft glow. A flight attendant passed with coffee, careful to avoid row 1C, where a mother held her son's wrist as though touch alone anchored him to earth. Marcus's breaths were thin threads of sound. His pauses. Evelyn watched every rise and fall, waiting for one that might not come. Charles sat 2 rows back, deliberately close enough to intervene. He had not revealed his full authority, not yet. Power meant little if it was the first thing one wielded. It meant more when it came only when needed most. Holbrook entered the cabin, checked straps, checked flow regulators, nodded. Vitals holding, he murmured. Evelyn's fingers tightened. Thank you for coming to look. He gave her a gentle half-smile. You don't need to thank me until we land. And then he moved on, trusting his crew. But trust, like altitude, can be a fragile thing. Turbulence. Not violent, but enough to stir drinks and rattle trays. Passengers sat upright, eyes flickering. A dull clang echoed where a service cart locked into place. Marcus's monitor responded first. A jump of pitch, a spike in pace. Beep, beep, beep. Evelyn froze. Marcus, stay with me. Please stay. Nurse-trained instincts kicked in, though. She was no nurse, only a mother who learned everything overnight. She checked oxygen line. Pulse. Color. His eyelids fluttered but did not wake. A nearby passenger rose. Do you need help? Before Evelyn could answer, Dana appeared, quick, too quick, nerves sharp beneath polished professionalism. You need to remain seated, she said firmly. The cabin must stay calm. He's desaturating. Evelyn's voice trembled. I need access to his emergency meds. They're in the overhead bin. Please. Dana's jaw clenched. She hesitated, a second too long. Charles stood at once. Opened the bin for her. Dana shot him a pointed look. Sir, you are not in authority here. He didn't flinch. And yet I'm asking you to help. She hesitated again. Pride made decisions where compassion should have answered. If we open bins during turbulence, items could fall. Injure others. Airline policy prohibits. Another jump on the monitor. Beep, 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 beep. The pitch spiked to a painful alarm. Evelyn's breath broke. Dana, please. Passengers watched, caught between rules and humanity. Charles leaned in, voice low but unyielding. If this child loses oxygen because you fear protocol more than conscience, you won't answer to me as a donor. Dana stiffened. You'll answer to me as board chairman. The words landed like a dropped anchor. Gasps rippled. Even Evelyn looked up in shock. Charles had held his identity until now, only power used at the breaking point. Dana swallowed hard, fear replacing resistance. She opened the overhead bin. Evelyn grabbed the emergency satchel with shaking hands. Within seconds, oxygen steadied. Monitors softened. Beep-a-beep. Relief swept through the cabin. Some passengers clapped quietly, not celebration, gratitude, recognition. But Charles knew what he saw in Dana's eyes. Resentment, not remorse. This wouldn't be the last test. Holbrook returned moments later, alert and controlled. Report. Dana stood rigid. Stabilized. Evelyn kissed her son's cool forehead. We're still here. Just hold on. Holbrook nodded once, then leaned toward Charles. I'll stay up front. But if turbulence worsens, we divert. Charles answered with equal weight. And if policy fails compassion again, Holbrook finished for him. Then we fixed the policy. At 30,000 feet, a fragile balance held. But the hardest moment was still ahead, An unseen decision by someone no one suspected. Power had shifted once. It was about to shift again. 2 hours into the flight, the cabin slept in restless pockets. Rain streaked the windows like silver threads. Evelyn stayed awake, whispering steady words into Marcus's ear, though he could not answer. The monitor kept time like a fragile heartbeat of the whole aircraft. Charles remained upright, eyes forward, thinking. He had intervened. He had revealed authority. Yet something still felt wrong. Dana moved down the aisle with a tray of water cups, overly polite to passengers she previously ignored. Fear, not empathy, had corrected her behavior, and Charles knew fear never lasted. But Walton, the gate supervisor, had not been seen since boarding. Charles assumed he stayed behind. It wasn't until Holbrook returned from the cockpit that new tension gathered in his shoulders. "Mr. Bennett," the captain murmured quietly, "you should know, Walton is on this flight." Charles's eyes narrowed. "As crew?" "No. As passenger." Holbrook gestured toward seat 3A. "He boarded last minute. Bump upgrade. Someone wanted him up here." Charles followed his gaze. Walton sat reading a tablet, no stain of remorse on his posture, only comfort. But that wasn't the twist. That came seconds later. Holbrook continued, voice lower than engine hum. "There's more." Walton filed an incident report mid-flight. It's time-stamped 15 minutes ago. "He claims you interfered with crew authority." The words were ice water down Charles's spine. "That report," Holbrook said, jaw set, "may trigger a midair override." Evelyn overheard, eyes wide. "Override? What does that mean?" Holbrook spoke with measured gravity. "If corporate flags the report, they can order ground medical diversion or removal upon landing. They can also command the crew to restrict passenger involvement, including Mr. Bennett's." Dana froze 2 rows away, tray trembling in her hand. Passengers leaned in, unease blooming like shadow through the cabin. Walton noticed the ripple. Looked up, smiled, thin, victorious. He had found another route to power, paperwork, not prejudice. Rules instead of decency. Charles exhaled slowly, calm even as stakes rose skyward. "Captain," he asked, "can corporate override you?" "In safety matters, yes," Holbrook admitted. "But only if someone with higher operational authority echoes the decision. Someone higher. Someone above the captain. Above the crew. Above Walton's report." And at that moment, a quiet chime sounded overhead. A message indicator light blinked on the cabin intercom, unseen by passengers but unmistakable to crew. Dana scanned it. Her face changed. Pale. Disbelieving. She stepped toward Charles, voice barely audible. "Sir, corporate just sent a code red review on this transport. It requests validation from hospital ownership." Evelyn gasped. "Ownership?" Charles stood, coat falling open just enough for his ID card to show. A silver badge, embossed with 2 words. Bennett Health Holdings owner. Passengers stared as realization moved seat to seat. He wasn't just a donor. Not just a board chair. He owned the hospital that got Marcus approved. Holbrook's eyes widened with slow recognition. "You're not here as a representative." "No," Charles answered. His voice carried through the cabin like a clear bell. "I'm here as the one who signed the charter of the very foundation corporate is asking to confirm. And my answer is simple. This flight continues to Seattle. No diversion. No removal. Full crew compliance." Walton shot up from 3A. "You can't overrule flight operations." Charles met his stare, not angry, but resolute. "I outrank your report." Dana's tray shook. Passengers watched breathlessly. The balance of power shifted permanently. Holbrook nodded once, decision sealed. Then, he said, "We fly on. Miles yet to go. And a reckoning still waiting at landing." The cabin descended in slow arcs toward Seattle. Clouds parted like curtains to evening blue. Airport lights glittering below. Salvation within reach. Yet Marcus's monitor told a different truth. Beep a beep a beep, a sudden flutter. A warning tone. Evelyn stiffened. "Marcus." "Stay with me, honey." Holbrook moved from the flight deck, urgent. "We're 23 minutes out. If his saturation drops again, we bypass Seattle for emergency nearest field diversion." "No," Evelyn whispered. "He's held this far." Charles stood, bracing on the headrest ahead. Captain, what do you need to keep us on course? Crew coordination. Zero resistance. Holbrook's voice was calm steel, equal weight of authority and compassion. But resistance had not ended. One last fracture remained. Walton, still simmering in seat 3A, rose with printed paperwork, a second report. Per Airline Regulation 12.8, I am formally asserting unsafe onboard medical transport without proper equipment clearance. I recommend forced diversion on arrival. It was his final move, not to stop the flight, but to punish them when it ended. A corporate hammer waiting at touchdown. Dana froze between them, torn. She looked at Marcus, then at Walton, then at Charles. Her voice broke. This isn't right. Not anymore. Passengers watched, some recording now openly, not scandal, but witness. Proof. Accountability. Charles stepped into the aisle, facing Walton. You filed that report before turbulence, before we stabilized him, before you saw a mother save her child. You made this about control, not safety. Walton bristled. I followed the book and left your heart closed, Charles answered. Then the turn no one saw coming. Holbrook lifted a small device from his pocket, a flight manifest scanner. He tapped Walton's boarding tag, one soft chime. Dana gasped. That ticket wasn't processed through medical approval. Holbrook frowned. He boarded with non-crew priority status. That means someone cleared him manually. Charles's eyes narrowed. The seed of the twist bloomed. Walton hadn't been a bystander. He'd been inside. Not only obstructing, monitoring. For what purpose? Evelyn's voice, fragile as thread, answered it first. He wanted us denied boarding from the start. Walton's silence confirmed more than words. Holbrook spoke quietly, firmly. I have authority to file Captain's incident counterclaim. Inadequate disclosure. Unapproved boarding. Interference with medically authorized transport. Dana's hands trembled, not from fear now, but conviction. I'll sign as witness. A hum of passenger voices rose, not angry, not cruel, but united. For Marcus. For his mother. For decency. Charles looked to Walton with no triumph, only truth. You aren't the villain, he said softly. You're the lesson. Holbrook moved to the intercom. Cabin, he announced, prepare for direct approach to Seattle. Medical team standing by. All staff under full operational compliance. Dana swallowed hard, then stepped to Evelyn's row. I was wrong, she whispered. I judged what I didn't understand. Evelyn, exhausted, trembling, still found grace. Help us land. That's enough. The plane tilted toward runway lights, long strips of hope across the dark. A crew once indifferent now rallied, rechecking restraints, stabilizing oxygen, notifying ground medical. Marcus's pulse steadied like a tired soldier who chose not to fall. Charles took the seat beside Evelyn for descent. Almost there, he said. Wind roared, wheels dropped, runway rushed up in bright lines. The plane landed smooth, like a prayer answered in steel and air. But consequences were waiting at the gate. This was not the end. It was the opening of accountability. The aircraft doors opened to crisp Seattle air and flashing medical transport lights. Rain misted across the jet bridge like breath from the sky itself. Paramedics waited with quiet purpose, rolling equipment forward the moment Evelyn stood. Marcus remained unconscious, but stable, a faint blush of life warming his cheeks. His monitor blinked steady green. It felt like a small miracle earned inch by inch. Passengers stepped aside without hesitation. Many touched Evelyn's shoulder, soft as prayer. One elderly man whispered, "We were all with you up there, ma'am." Another pressed a folded note into her palm for Marcus when he wakes. Charles walked beside the stretcher as paramedics secured lines. He wasn't grand or loud, only present, like a pillar that refused to break. And behind them, escorted by two uniformed airline managers, stood Walton. His badge was clipped from his shirt, his tablet confiscated. The managers spoke in low tones as paperwork was exchanged. Counterclaims, witness statements, captain authority enactments. No raised voices. No spectacle. Just consequences. Holbrook joined the group, posture straight. Mr. Walton, for interference with emergency medical transport and failure to disclose boarding status, you are placed on administrative leave pending review. Walton inhaled sharply, but there was no ground left to stand on. Passengers stepped forward, one by one, offering statements to the managers. Not angry, factual. Calm, clear. A community risen from silence. Dana approached Evelyn last. Her voice was rough but sincere. Mrs. Reed, I can't undo what I said, but I gave my written statement, and I'll speak it again if needed. Evelyn looked at her, tired beyond words, shaken, but not vindictive. Thank you, she said simply. Dana swallowed. I hope your son pulls through. Evelyn's reply trembled like light on water. So do I. Marcus was transferred to the waiting medical team. Rain shimmered against the stretcher's protective canopy like silver beads. Before they rolled him away, Charles placed a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. You got him this far, he said. Now let Seattle do the rest. Evelyn's breath hitched. I couldn't have without you. He shook his head. Only open a door. You walk through it. Holbrook stepped in, hat tucked under his arm, humility plain in his stance. Mrs. Reed, when he wakes, if you're comfortable, I'd like to visit. Her eyes softened. You're welcome any time. The paramedics signaled readiness. The stretcher moved toward the ambulance bay, wheels whispering over wet concrete. Evelyn followed, one hand always touching Marcus, tethering him to this world. Charles watched them go, rain gathering in the lines of his coat. Not defeat, not triumph, just quiet resolve. Walton stood alone, small against the wide lights of the tarmac. Holbrook turned to Charles. Policy will change after this. Not because of me, Charles answered. Because enough people finally cared. Holbrook nodded once, soldier to soldier in a war of compassion. As the ambulance doors closed, its lights painted the night in red and hope. But this story was not over. Not yet. Beyond the hospital gates lay the hardest part, waiting, surgery, fear, and the long climb back to life. And in that journey, every choice made today would echo. A mother, a child, a crew, a company forced to look at itself. All changed because dignity was defended at 30,000 feet. The doors of Seattle Children's Heart Center slid open with a hush of warm air and fluorescent hope. Inside, the walls were calm green, the lighting soft, a place built to hold fear gently. Marcus was wheeled straight to surgery. Evelyn signed forms with trembling hands, watching each letter as if her signature were life support too. Charles sat nearby in the family waiting area, coat draped over the chair beside him, present but quiet, a guardian who did not need to speak to be felt. Hours passed like days. Rain tapped the window in gentle percussion. Evelyn prayed, not in words, but in the rhythm of her fingertips against Marcus's favorite blanket, carried all the way from Dallas. Soft navy fleece worn thin at the corners. She traced its seams until her fingers went numb. At last, footsteps approached. Dr. Elaine Foster, lead cardiac surgeon, stood at the doorway, as tired, cap still tied at the back of her head. Evelyn rose before she had breath to speak. Dr. Foster smiled, small but real. He made it through. The repair took, and his vitals look promising. He's not awake yet, but his heart is stronger than we expected. Evelyn's knees nearly gave out. Charles caught her elbow, steadying her, just as he had at the gate, and in the sky, and on the wet Seattle tarmac. He's alive, Evelyn whispered. Yes, said the surgeon. And he has a chance, a true one. Tears came without restraint, rolling warm across cold cheeks. Evelyn pressed her hands to her face, sobbing not in desperation this time, but in relief so deep it shook her through. Charles stepped back, giving her space. Some victories belong wholly to the ones who fought the hardest. Later, when Marcus lay in recovery, machines steady and quiet now, no alarms, no frantic pitches, Evelyn sat beside his bed and rested her forehead against his hand. You held on, she murmured. You held on for me. Charles entered softly, stopping at the door. He looked stronger. Evelyn nodded, voice gentle and sure. Because people helped when they could. And when they almost didn't, someone reminded them why they should. She looked at Charles, not as a billionaire, not as board chair or owner, but as a man who chose compassion over convenience. You changed the outcome of my son's life. He met her gaze with humility. No, you changed it every day you stay beside him. I only walked with you for one flight. A nurse appeared with 2 chairs. He'll sleep for a while. You're welcome to stay. Charles took a seat across from Evelyn, hands clasped, posture quiet. For the first time since he boarded that plane, he allowed himself to exhale, long, slow, leaving room for something softer. Tomorrow would bring news stories, airline reviews, policy meetings. Walton would answer for his choices. Dana would face new training. Holbrook would testify on record. But tonight was not about systems or statements. Tonight was one boy breathing, one mother watching, one man choosing to stay long after obligation ended. A soft beeping replaced the storm of the sky, steady, rhythmic, alive. Marcus lived, and morning was coming. June's sunlight warmed the courtyard at Seattle Children's Heart Center, painting soft shadows over fresh-planted flowers. A wind chime rang near the fountain, bright, delicate notes that sounded like heartbeats made of silver. On a bench beneath a maple tree sat Marcus Reed, thinner than boys his age, but awake, alive, eyes open to the world again. A light jacket covered faded surgical scars. His breath was even. Color bloomed in his cheeks. Evelyn sat beside him, one hand resting on his back, steady as sunrise. She watched him trace the grain of the wooden bench with curious fingers, every movement a miracle stitched with time. Across the courtyard, Charles Bennett arrived quietly, a small gift bag in his hand. No entourage, no board badge, just a simple man in a gray coat, the same one he wore at Gate C-17 the day life tilted toward hope. Marcus grinned the moment he saw him. "Mr. Bennett." Charles's answering smile was soft and full. "You look stronger than me now." Marcus laughed, small, breathy, beautiful. "I walked from the elevator without stopping once." Evelyn's eyes shimmered. "He does 3 laps around a unit every morning. The nurses can hardly keep up." Charles sat with them, placing the gift between them. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside lay a small model airplane, silver and blue, with row 1C marked by a tiny star. Marcus held it like treasure. "Does this mean I get to fly again?" Charles chuckled. "Maybe someday. But the next plane you board will be for a vacation, not survival." Evelyn nodded, drawing in a slow, grateful breath. "There's something you should know. After the review, the airline changed policy. They now have a dedicated medical boarding protocol. Training. Clear authority chain. No more confusion at gates." "And Holbrook?" Charles asked. "Promoted to safety liaison," Evelyn said. "He leads the new program." "And Dana?" His voice held neither judgment nor bitterness. Evelyn smiled gently. "She sent us a letter last week. She's in retraining by choice. Says she wants to be the flight attendant families hope to see on days like ours." Charles looked out at the courtyard, leaves shimmering like tiny wings. "Good. People can grow when given the chance." A soft breeze moved through the trees. Marcus rested his head against his mother's shoulder, eyes half closed in peace. The moment felt tender whole. Evelyn reached into her bag and withdrew an envelope. "This is for you." Inside was a photograph. Marcus at physical therapy, gripping parallel bars, sweat on his brow, determination burning in his eyes. On the back, Evelyn had written in clear, steady handwriting, "Thank you for being the hand that held the door open when the world wanted to close it." Charles traced the words with his thumb, slowly, reverently. "He opened it," he murmured. I only pushed with him. For a long time, the 3 of them sat in silence, watching sunlight scatter across the fountain like mercy made visible. No sirens, no monitors screaming, only breeze, laughter, a heartbeat steady and sure. A journey that began with fear in Dallas ended with 3 people sharing gentle June light, proof that dignity defended can ripple outward, changing strangers, systems, and futures. Marcus lifted the airplane, letting it catch the sun. "Next time I fly," he said softly, "I want to sit by a window." Evelyn kissed his temple. Charles smiled toward the open sky. And somewhere far above, beyond clouds and memory, one flight continued, engraved not in metal or miles, but in human hearts. Andy, thanks for watching.